The pop princess that took over our 2021 summer, Olivia Rodrigo. Welcome to 6 Notes of Separation. If you're new to the pod, here's how it's going to work. Every episode, I dive into the life and music career of an artist, looking at their past success, their scandals, and any past relationships they might have had. But to keep the cookie crumbling, I've put my own little twist on things. Every episode I do has to be linked to the previous and succeeding artist in some way. This could be through a producer in common. This could be through artists they've both collaborated with. It even could be through subliminal lyrical references. Truly, anything goes as long as there's a link. So without further ado, I'm going to get stuck into who journalists have dubbed as the voice of our generation, as well as the defining voice of the 2020s. We're going to be diving into who I grew up knowing as a Disney star, but who others grew up knowing as the pop star, Miss Olivia Rodrigo. Before I get too ahead of myself though, and take you to the start of Olivia's life, it's time to reveal the link between this episode and last episode's Matty Healy. Now, when I first thought of the connection between these two, there were two artists that popped into my mind, Taylor Swift and Holly Humberstone. I'll start with Holly Humberstone. She opened for Olivia Rodrigo on her 2022 Sour tour and has also worked closely with Matty Healy on two of her songs called Sleep Tight and Please Don't Leave Just Yet, which Matty Healy co-wrote and helped produce. So that was just a nice little link there that I found. But there's also this whole Taylor Swift, Matty Healy, Olivia Rodrigo situation, which honestly I feel like journalists and kind of crap magazines just took and ran with. But if you haven't been made aware already, Matty Healy and Taylor Swift had rekindled their 2014 romance, if you will, last year after Taylor had broken up with her 6-year-long partner, Joe Alwyn. As we all know, for we couldn't escape it, Taylor's latest album, The Tortured Poets Department, dropped in April this year, and fans, after picking apart many of the lyrics and tracks, found, surprisingly, that a lot of the music was all about Matty Healy and actually not about her 6-year partnership, which we all thought it would be. And one of these songs that was very clearly about the 1975 frontman was a song called I'm Gonna Get You Back off of the anthology, the second half of the Tortured Poets Department. And it was the title here which really gave a lot away. It's formatted in a way that it's all lowercase with no spaces, so it looks very reminiscent of the 2014 1975 song Falling For You, which is laid out in a very similar way. It's all lowercase with no space bars. And that song is said to have been dedicated to Taylor. So already we have this little fan theory that this song is about Matty Healy. But where Olivia is dragged into it all is through the similarities of the lyrics in Taylor's song I'm Gonna Get You Back to Olivia's song Get Him Back from her 2023 album Guts. Here's some of the lyrics so you can compare and contrast yourself. In Taylor's song, some of it goes, whether I'm gonna be your wife or gonna smash up your bike, I haven't decided yet, but I'm gonna get you back. Now, if you take this and compare it to Olivia's, I want to key his car, I want to make him lunch, I want to break his heart and be the one to stitch it up. I mean, the two have commonalities. You can't deny that. The two sound similar. I haven't really listened to the Tortured Poets anthology, don't sue me, but when I just saw the lyrics written down, I don't know what that melody sounds like from I'm Gonna Get You Back, but the lyrics written down immediately as I read it, I was like, that sounds exactly like Get Him Back by Olivia Rodrigo. And I don't know why, because maybe it's just the amount of syllables or the way it's structured, but it feels very similar. So some news outlets took this and spun a wild story where they thought Taylor was simultaneously making a dig at Olivia as she was with Healy because of this whole plagiarism, Olivia Rodrigo versus Taylor Swift drama, which happened with Sour, her debut album, which we're going to get onto later in the episode. But to be honest, in my opinion, I think it's all a load of crap. I honestly think the two separate songs were written at different times and clearly about different things. Like, the song Taylor wrote seems very obviously about Matty Healy, and the song Olivia wrote seems very obviously about some relationship. I do not think it was some subliminal dig at Olivia. I just think news stories were just a bit desperate, to be honest. And they were just wanting a tabloid headline, and they just wanted to reel people in. I don't think it's really much to look into. But regardless, it is a link. So now we've got that out of the way. Let me take you back to 2003 in California, where Olivia Rodrigo is born. She grew up listening to alternative rock bands that her parents listened to, such as Pearl Jam, Green Day, and the White Stripes, a genre of music that you can more than definitely hear come through on her own music and her albums. At the age of 5, she had vocal lessons and then was put into acting lessons shortly afterwards. She was a bit of a talented child, to be honest. Had a bit of a talented bone in her body. She played the piano at 9 and the guitar at 12, and also started songwriting at 12, citing her first kind of, I guess, songwriting inspiration as Taylor Swift, which is funny when you see the kind of trajectory of that friendship, I guess. When she was 7, she appeared in her first TV advert for Old Navy, which was an American clothing company. And I guess that kind of led to her first acting gig in 2015, where she played the lead role in a film called An American Girl, Grace Stirs Up Success. But then came her breakthrough in 2016. And this is how I was introduced to Olivia Rodrigo. In 2016, she moves to LA to star in a Disney show called Bizaardvark. In this show, she is very young and a bit geeky, and now she's kind of like this gorgeous pop princess. It's funny to me because that's not the Olivia I knew, or I guess was just like first exposed to. But anyway, when the show ended in 2019, Olivia Rodrigo's Disney success didn't stop there. She then went on to star in High School Musical, the series, which was theoretically the generation's introduction to High School Musical, which makes me feel very, very old at the ripe age of 19. It seems a bit criminal that the High School Musical kids younger than us are going to know is going to be the Disney Channel High School Musical, the series, with Joshua Bassett and Olivia Rodrigo. Times are changing, guys. Times are changing. Anyway, I think that gives a very nice insight into the range of her fan base, because I think you're going to get kids who are fans of her because of Disney. So you're going to get people who are very young, as well as later, which we're about to touch upon, all the teenagers and above and millennials that her music resonates with. And it was ultimately this show that got her recognised as not just a Disney star, but as a musician as well. In November 2019, she wrote and released the song All I Want, an absolutely banging song, for the show, which became hugely popular and I'd say acted as the prelude for what was to come in January 2021. But before we get to her smash hit single Driver's License, I think it's important to touch upon that in between this time, in between releasing All I Want and releasing Driver's License, she lands a record deal with Geffen Records, who have also signed the likes of Anne-Marie, Holly Humberstone, again, another nice link, Guns N' Roses, and so many, many more. Like, they're a huge, huge label owned by Universal Music Group, one of the giants. So the time comes in January 2021 when she releases Driver's License, and the internet goes absolutely ballistic with it. Within weeks, it was breaking all kinds of records. One example being it breaking Spotify's record twice for the amount of daily streams accumulated. It racked up 15.7 million streams in one day, and then she broke her own record again, where it racked up 17 million streams in the next day. It was also the first song in Spotify history to hit 80 million streams in under a week. I mean, I think what Driver's License is a really good example of is also the power of TikTok, how that song just completely blew up. I think TikTok's such a fascinating one because it really does shape the music industry, and I think it really does shape artists' careers. There are so many artists that would not be known like they are if it wasn't for TikTok. And I think Olivia Rodrigo was one of these artists that kind of came through that. Driver's License also landed its place firmly at the top spot on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. I mean, again, a crazy, crazy achievement for someone's debut single to get number one on all charts. Massive. In May of the same year, Rodrigo's debut album Sour drops, and it's safe to say it's become the defining sound of that summer. Everyone was talking about having a sour summer, and it was kind of like a summer of maybe, dare I say, heartbreak or relationships, whatever. It was a sour summer. And then I think this is a point I touched upon in Charlie's episode, but in a similar way to Barbie taking complete control of summer 23 and, you know, Pink being the theme for that year and the soundtrack to that movie kind of dominating the charts. And in the same way, Bratz dominated our 2024 summer with Green as the colour and the album as being the soundtrack to this summer. I think Sour very much felt like the soundtrack to that summer, to 2021 summer. I don't know if it had the colour resonance that I think Pink and Green did for Barbie and Brat, but Purple was definitely Olivia. Like, I don't know about you, but when I think of Purple in the music industry, I'm going to associate that with Sour and Guts, her next album. And I think this is also interesting, this is one of the first times you really see an album become a cultural phenomenon. Maybe I'm too young to remember other albums that had the same effect, but for me, and maybe my generation, this was definitely the first album that seemed to completely take control of the internet. It was everywhere. You could not get through that summer and not know heart for heart the words to one of her songs. Sour spent 5 weeks at number one on the US Billboard 200, becoming the longest reigning number one album by a female artist in 2021. That's mind-blowing. That's equalising with Adele's 30, which, you know, was a long-awaited and massively, massively anticipated record. And Sour equalised that as a debut album from a new rising artist. It also beat Billie Eilish's sophomore album, Happier Than Ever. You know, that also was, again, a very highly anticipated album after her smash hit debut album, When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And Sour beat that. And actually what's really interesting about that is, as someone who's in the Billie fandom, the competition when Olivia Rodrigo blew up was mad. The fandom hated Olivia Rodrigo so much because it was threatening. It's like, you know, Billie was the young artist, the young female solo artist who was the voice of the generation, of our generation. And all of a sudden we had this brand new Olivia Rodrigo who released an album literally a month before Billie's, and it completely took over. It like overshadowed every other album to come in 2021, I think. It was just the magnitude of this album was on a similar level to Brat, I would say. But yeah, Olivia ended up having the most streamed album of 2021. And in a similar way to Billie with Billie's debut album, it received multiple Grammy nominations. She picked up wins for Best New Artist, Best Pop Vocal Album, and Best Pop Solo Performance for Driver's License at the 2022 Grammy Awards. And I think another thing that caused a lot of people to be a bit salty, perhaps, about Olivia's success was the speed of her success and how young she was. You know, I think she was 17 or 18 at the time, super young, and had literally hopped straight out of Disney Channel. Like her path to success was so quick. And when you compare that to fellow Disney stars Sabrina Carpenter's career, it's very, very different. Like, Sabrina was a Disney star from 2014 to 2017, but she didn't really have her breakthrough until 2022, if not 2023. It took a lot longer for her to kind of hustle and bustle her way into the industry. You know, it took her kind of, I think, about 6 years. Olivia, it literally took a matter of months. Anyway, in 2022, Olivia embarked on the Sour Tour, which received some criticism for the fact she was performing in 8,000 to 10,000 capacity venues. I mean, the demand for tickets were ridiculous. Like, she, you know, was performing at Brixton Academy, which again is like this 8,000 to 10,000 capacity venue, if I remember correctly, and she could have been selling out the O2. And I remember queuing, like being in the Ticketmaster queue for her tickets, and it was something like there was like 100,000 people in the queue with me. And I was like, this is a 10,000 capacity venue, if that. And there's 10 times the demand for tickets. Like, it was bonkers. So there was a bit of anger, I think, from fans about that. But I think it was actually a really smart move from Olivia, because she said, this would be my first ever tour. I want to start off as an artist in a gradual way. I think she was very mindful of the fact that if she started at arenas, then the course of her career could only really get one step higher to stadiums. But I think what was so clever about starting with smaller venues is she could then experience those intimate shows, those intimate crowds, her first time performing as a musician. And then, she could work her way up to an arena tour, and it would feel more of an achievement than if she had just jumped straight off the back of Disney into an arena tour. She's also renowned for having fantastic openers for her tours. I mean, key ones being Gracie Abrams, who blew up because of the Eras tour. So this was, predating the Eras tour when she was still quite a small artist. She had Gracie Abrams, Holly Humstone, Chappell Roan, and Baby Queen. All artists who could easily sell out their own headline tours now if they were to go on them. And they have. With the release of her second album, Guts, in 2023, the most critically acclaimed album of the year, she's also had openers such as Remy Wolf and Pink Pantheress. I think a really good summary of her success can be seen through something a journalist wrote about attending the Guts tour, saying it felt more like a greatest hits tour than it did Olivia's first arena tour. And I think that's so telling of the magnitude of her discography. Like, every single one of her songs has pretty much blown up. Like, not so much from Guts, but definitely from Sour, her debut album. I think it would be hard if you found one song on there that you didn't at least recognise. And even with Guts, she's had massive, massive hits and singles with that album as well. So the fact that at 19 years old, maybe 20 now, I'm not sure, but the fact at that age, she's selling out arenas and has basically put on what feels like a greatest hits tour, I just think it's kind of incomprehensible slightly. It's like, how... I don't even know how she's comprehending it, because even as someone from the outside, I couldn't comprehend that. Like, I'm 19 now, and to think I could be selling out arenas and having everyone know every single one of my songs, it's crazy, to be honest. But it's not just her music alone that's had a huge moment. She's also had some iconic moments, such as the friendship she struck up with Noah Kahan via the BBC Radio 1's Live Lounge. To summarise, the Live Lounge is basically when an artist will go into BBC Radio 1, they'll do a rendition of their own song and then pick one song from any artist of their choosing to cover. Olivia covered Noah's song Stick Season, and then when Noah took his turn in the Live Lounge, he covered Olivia's song Lacey, and through that they formed a really sweet friendship. And the Live Lounge is kind of renowned for that. I think they did that with Harry Styles and Lizzo. Like, it's something really sweet that happens. But besides that, she's also had astronomical success with her debut performance at Glastonbury in 2022. Her set's gone down as one to remember in Glastonbury history. I think partly due to the context in which it was performed, but also because it was still that Sour hype. She'd just come off the back of doing a bunch of London shows for the Sour tour, which loads of people can get tickets to. So when she was announced at Glastonbury, obviously that's probably where she got the biggest exposure and her biggest audience. But the context of this show was important. On the Friday before Olivia performed, the US Supreme Court had made the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which is the piece of law which makes it a constitutional right to have access to an abortion. With that being overturned, it meant that right no longer existed. It was no longer a right for people to have access to an abortion. Therefore, meaning states started to prohibit abortions, which is, I can't even, the shock and the terror, it was a really scary time, I think, for everyone to literally witness the world go backwards. And, that's coming from me, who lives in the UK, who wasn't even directly affected by this law like Americans are. But in response to this decision, Olivia Rodrigo invited Lily Allen on stage to sing and perform Lily Allen's song, Fuck You. Before she performed it, she made a little announcement to the crowd saying, "I want to dedicate this next song to the 5 members of the Supreme Court who have showed us that at the end of the day, they don't give a shit about freedom." She goes on to name drop all the conservative members of the Supreme Court and ends with, "We hate you," which I think really captures the anger and the shock and the hatred and the feelings the world was feeling and the crowds were feeling. It was just such a fantastic moment because I think it was in a time where, you know, you have this amazing festival, probably one of the biggest festivals in the UK, and it's like, as it's going on, you have this horrible piece of news that's going to massively affect women's rights. And I think to have a bit of relief, I think, through that with Olivia's performance, it was just what the crowd needed and wanted. Her set was fantastic. You know, Olivia's activism is something she's continued to be very, very consistent with, supporting reproductive healthcare for women through her charity Fund for Good, as well as making donations to the Women's Against Violence Europe organisation during the European leg of her Guts tour. Again, I think it's refreshing to see such a young female artist be so vocal about real issues in the world, because it didn't used to be like that. Like, artists used to always have to kind of, you know, basically keep quiet and express through their music. But the fact that I think that's definitely changing. Like, you see that with Billie, you see that with Olivia. Like, I think it's quite almost empowering to see it all change. But as with all artists and figures in the public eye, her career hasn't been without some competition and some bitter relationships. A key one being the one I've teased a little bit in the episode, which is that between Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift. As we all know, Olivia has been a huge fan of Taylor's throughout her life. You know, it was really what got her into songwriting, got her into the guitar. And in a really full circle moment when Olivia was breaking through with driver's license, Taylor Swift really endorsed Olivia's music and really, you know, publicly came out saying, "Wow, I support, like, this is a great song." You know, they struck up a cordial friendship. But things took a turn when the culture-shaping and quaking album Sour dropped in 2021. People were very, very, very quick to notice that Olivia had given Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff, Taylor's producer, interpolation credits on her song One Step Forward, Three Steps Back, due to the piano melody it took from New Year's Day, Taylor's song from Reputation. For those who don't know what interpolation is, it's basically when a melody from an already existing song is used, but re-recorded instead of sampled. It's a way of masking unlicensed sampling if the original artist or label has declined, you know, access to licensing, or if the sample of the piece is too expensive to license. So already I feel like this, you know, brings up some tensions. Did Olivia have to interpolate the song because Taylor and her label didn't approve it? Or was it for the simple reason that it was just too expensive to sample? You know, speculation there. But the real issues start through Olivia's song Deja Vu. She ends up having to share 50% of credits and royalties with Taylor Swift due to the bridge of the song being plagiarized from Taylor Swift's Cruel Summer. What doesn't help Olivia in this scenario is that in an interview with the Rolling Stones in April 2021, before the album dropped, she said that Cruel Summer literally inspired the bridge for Deja Vu. So already she'd planted the seed in people's heads that that bridge of Deja Vu is gonna sound very familiar to Cruel Summer. So of course when Deja Vu drops, the only thing people are going to be thinking about is, this reminds me of Cruel Summer. And you know what? It really kicked her in the teeth because she ended up having to split 50% of royalties with Taylor and ended up being filed for plagiarism. Not ideal. But it does make you wonder, you know, if Olivia never came out saying that, if she never came out saying that Cruel Summer inspired Deja Vu, would she have been done for plagiarism? I honestly don't think so, because I don't think people would have even thought about it. I think the only reason people were looking for plagiarism was because she'd mentioned that Cruel Summer was the inspiration behind that song. She addressed this whole issue in an article with Teen Vogue, stating, "I think it's disappointing to see people take things out of context and discredit any young woman's work." Going on to say in an article for the Rolling Stones again in September 2023, before Guts came out, "I was caught a little off guard, and it wasn't something I was super involved in. It was more team on team." But she also ends it with saying, "I don't think I would ever personally do that." You know, the relationship between Taylor and Olivia is slightly severed here. It's all of a sudden gone from very cordial and very supportive and very much like mentor and mentee to very bitter. And I think it's interesting that Olivia says, "I don't think I would ever personally do that." Because it shows, you know, despite the fact she said, you know, it wasn't something she was involved with and it's more team on team, the morality behind it and the principles, she's basically saying, you know, it was kind of cruel for Taylor to accuse her of plagiarism when it was purely inspiration. But I think, again, that's such a fine line. At what point do you call something inspiration and at what point do you call it darn plagiarism? It's a line that people accuse Olivia of crossing quite a lot. Her song Good For You, again, she had to split 50% of royalties with Paramore because it copied their song Misery Business. There's just a lot of drama, it seems to be, surrounding Olivia and her music, which I suppose takes us very nicely to our last huge scandal. Olivia, Sabrina and Joshua Bassett. If you didn't know about this feud in 2021, let me give you a summary. In 2020, it's rumoured that Olivia and Joshua Bassett, both stars of High School Musical, the musical, the series, are dating. Later that year, Joshua Bassett is spotted with Sabrina Carpenter, and it's then rumoured that they're dating. Sabrina's obviously an ex-Disney star herself, so it's kind of this battle of Disney stars. But then, of course, they all end up making music. So it's a battle of like ex-Disney stars turned musicians. Olivia releases her song Driver's License in January 2021, and the lyrics feel very explicitly about this whole situation. Obviously, her lyrics go, "You're probably with that blonde girl who always made me doubt. She's so much older than me. She's everything I'm insecure about." Sabrina's only 3 years older than Olivia, but still fitting with the lyrics. And Olivia goes on to say, "Guess you didn't mean what you wrote in that song about me," referring to the song Joshua Bassett wrote called Anyone Else, which he wrote in 2020, again rumoured to be about Olivia Rodrigo. Joshua responds to Driver's License 1 week later with a song called Lie, 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 which I think really summarises this whole situation. Like, that title alone is so petty. I mean, can we grow up? Lie, 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 like really? You could have just named it Lie, but you go for Lie, Lie, Lie. Like, it just, the whole thing just seems so childish. But anyway, he responds with this song and some of the lyrics go, "I know what you say about me. I hope that it makes you happy. You can't seem to get me off your mind." And in the music video, he's driving alone in a car, which, you know, everyone was very quick to notice was a nod to Driver's License. Sabrina then does her side of the story and responds in the same month, all January 21, and writes a song called Skin, with some of the lyrics going, "I'm not asking you to let it go. You've been telling your side, so I'll be telling mine. Maybe we could have been friends if I met you in another life." And Joshua Bassett praises this song on Instagram. So it's very obvious that those two are in a little bit of an affair, you know, a little bit of a love romance situation. And Sabrina's just like, you know, it's not fair that Olivia was the first to comment on this drama and now she's got her side of the story. Like, it's time to give mine. It all gets just a little bit toxic. Time goes on, you know, they all keep releasing music. Olivia releases Deja Vu, which again, everyone's very quick to assume is about this Joshua Bassett and Sabrina Carpenter situation. Joshua Bassett releases an EP, all with kind of like love ballads, which is about the situation. Sabrina releases All Because I Loved a Boy, which again has very key lyrics. You know, a good example being, "I'm a rebound getting round, stealing from the young. Tell me who I am, because I don't have a choice. All because I liked a boy." I mean, a phenomenal piece of lyricism there. That song is just a phenomenal, amazing. Like, it's so good. And I think it's such a, it addresses the whole situation so well, because Sabrina was completely villainized. Like, everyone took Olivia's side. She was this new, innocent young artist who had been heartbroken because Sabrina Carpenter and Joshua Bassett had basically cheated on Olivia and Joshua. And Sabrina's like, hang on, why am I the issue in the situation? Why am I the one getting death threats? Why am I the one being villainized? All because I liked a boy? Really? So good. And honestly, I think this whole situation was just a classic example of how the music industry tries to plot women against each other and blow what should just be music into these huge, messy tabloid headlines. I think what's really interesting here as well is that, unlike Charlie and Lorde, where they collaborated on a song together and wrote harrowingly honest verses to hash out their problems, Olivia and Sabrina took a very one-on-one approach, 1v1 approach, actually. And it was very much back and forth. And they used, subliminal lyric references, kind of digging at each other, but, it was never explicitly about each other. But, I touched upon this a couple episodes ago with Charlie XCX's episode, but as much as I respect that Olivia and Sabrina were just writing and releasing music about their lives, I think they did it in such a sneaky way, because the honesty and kind of maturity that Lorde and Charlie exemplified with the Girl So Confusing remix is just something you don't get in the music industry at all, especially with feuds. Like, you always get back and forth like we see here, but that's why I just think, I think Lorde and Charlie has set a new expectation for feuds in the future, because I think actually, you wouldn't see Olivia and Sabrina hopping on a song, collabing with each other and writing harrowingly honest verses about how insecure they felt about the situation. You just saw them try and victimize themselves and villainize, the third party. It's interesting. I'm interested to see where feuds go after this Lorde and Charlie debacle, but that's me tangenting. Anyway, to conclude, Olivia's had such immense success at such a young age, and I'm just really excited to sit back and watch where her life goes, to be honest. I'm excited for her to kind of reach that stadium level of fame. I'm excited to see her evolve musically and as a human. We forget that she's barely 20, I think. I'm excited to see her grow up and see how that lends itself into her music. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. If you want to keep up to date with all things 6 Notes of Separation, please give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at 6 Notes Podcast. Otherwise, I'll see you very shortly for another episode on another artist, where we'll be exploring the link between them and Olivia Rodrigo.